Hi, and welcome to What Can I Do podcast series. I'm Marilyn Turner Triplett, and I want to welcome you to the second half of our April 3rd, 2020 interview with Reverend Jermaine Alberti, Executive Director, Pathways to Promise. My heart and mind, as you know, we're all in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And my suspicion is that it's addressing and raising anxieties, which may be triggering some mental health challenges for many of us. So what are some things that people can and should be doing in the face of this?
Well, that's a great question. I was doing some research for an article that I was writing for the Christian Citizen, actually, and ran across a very, very interesting fact, and that was that loneliness is as lethal as smoking 15 cigarettes per day.
Wow.
Yeah, loneliness, once again, is as lethal as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so when we think about COVID-19, social distancing, and the fact that many people were already distanced from people before this happened, and now they are not being allowed or being told, don't go to those groups you used to go to for support. You can imagine how this COVID-19 has increased loneliness for people, and as you mentioned, anxiety. And what we know is 18.1% of Americans have an anxiety disorder, and that equates to over 40 million people.
That's an incredible number.
Yeah,
that is an incredible number.
Yeah, so imagine 40 million people already in this country have an anxiety disorder already. Compile what's going on right now on top of an existing anxiety disorder, and you can see how impactful this can be for those persons. But remember, we talked about mental health challenges, people who may have anxiety, but it's not severe enough or impactful enough to warrant a diagnosis, but they still are experiencing some of the same symptoms of isolation, loneliness, not feeling connected to those around them, so forth. And so what I have created is a 5-step program to care for yourself. It's an intervention tool. And it's basically 5 steps. And the reason why I created this model is because most of us were on that craze where we were getting our steps in, right? Got my 10,000 steps in.
Yeah.
By the way, in your house, you can still get your steps in. If you got stairs, go up and down the stairs.
Yeah.
If you have a backyard, walk around the backyard 5 or 10 times. Some people are in very small spaces. So sometimes just sitting on your couch and just kind of like lifting your legs. So, there's so many ways that we can get exercise in, even in the smaller spaces. But just doing those kind of things to get those steps in, people are really just like, I'm getting my steps. And so everybody got Fitbits and all kind of stuff. So I thought people can relate to this idea of steps. So the STEPS is a acronym. People tend to learn and stick, these two tend to stick when they have an acronym. So S stands for share with someone who cares. So when you're feeling isolated, lonely, anxiety, depressed, share that with somebody who cares. And that doesn't have to be necessarily a family member. It's anybody who you believe cares about you as a person. So share what you are experiencing with someone who cares. The T in that acronym stands for tell the truth. And so many times that's the hardest thing to do because we're fearful of what folks are going to think about us if I tell them I'm having these thoughts.
Yeah.
What do you mean you having thoughts of suicide? What do you mean? By the way, if somebody said to you they were having thoughts of suicide and you was like, I'm not equipped to do that, write this number down. It is 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It is persons 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, trained professionals that are there to talk to that person who may be suicidal and connect them to someone who can help them in their community. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Some folks may say, you know what, I'm not talking to anybody about that, not too embarrassed to have that conversation.
Yes.
You can text the same National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 741-741. If you just text 741-741, that National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, somebody will respond to you via text and talk with you via text. If you are a veteran and you need to talk to somebody who understands veterans, you call that number and you press 1 if you are a veteran. So the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, for those of us who say, I just don't feel comfortable having that discussion,
Right.
You don't have to. Call on three-way, and on a three-way phone call that number and say, hey, you know what? I hear what you're saying. I want to call for help. I'm going to make a three-way phone call. You make that linkage. Let them talk to that person. And you just step aside in the background. So tell the truth about how you're feeling. If you are feeling down, if you're feeling just out of it, crappy, just tell the truth. And then once you tell that truth, sometimes what happens many times is that we don't know how to empty the trash bin. So the E stands for empty the trash bin. And what we're talking about there is that many times when we are deleting files on a computer, we delete them and they go to the trash bin, but the trash bin still has all these files in them because it hasn't been empty. And that's a good metaphor for life. There's so much stuff that we still carry with us that we just haven't deleted.
Wow. And
we say stuff like it's under the blood, but you still haven't deleted it. And really, I think that, that deletion in many ways is in forgiveness, because even though you don't have to forget what the person did to you or how they hurt you or harmed you, sometimes forgiveness can be the whiteout. Sometimes forgiveness can be that thing that causes you to just let it go and release it and give it to God.
Right.
Sometimes forgiveness can be that very thing that can help you empty that trash bin. And then the P stands for pause for self-care. I did a Facebook posting and I did a check-in and I asked all my friends to put in my comment box what they were doing for self-care. Mm-hmm. And I put a quote that self-care is an act of self-love.
Yes.
I mean, if you love yourself, take care of yourself. And that, the scripture says, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yes.
Well, sometimes it's hard to love your neighbor because you don't
actually
love
the problem. Yes. Yeah, people are actually loving their neighbor as they love themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And so, self-care is an act of self-love. So love yourself, take care of yourself. And then the S stands for seek assistance. Seek help from somebody. It could be a therapist. It could be your physical, primary care physician. It could be, but seek assistance, get help. So the 5 steps are: share with someone who cares, tell the truth, empty the trash bin, pause for self-care, and seek assistance. And I think that if we can do those 5 things, then we can then take care of ourselves. And so, if we have churches and we have faith leaders who we can entrust, that with, and not feel like we're going to be judged or seen as less of a Christian, because we admit that we have problems. We admit we have some challenges to our emotional well-being, social well-being. I think if we can find the church as a welcoming, inclusive, supportive, engaged place, then, and I love the UCC church has created what is called WISE congregation model. And WISE stands for welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaged congregations. And they actually have the congregation commit to a covenant to be a WISE congregation, a welcoming, inclusive, supportive, engaged community of faith. And so if we can do that, people will come to us. But Baylor University did some research, and the research talks about how when persons came to their church leadership, they were told that their mental illness wasn't real. They were told that they were not praying hard enough.
Yeah.
They were told that what they was experiencing was demonic. And so when they went to the very place that they thought they could get help, they were turned away. And that's why this literacy around mental health, this awareness around mental health is so important, because hopefully we've heard the adage, when you know better, you should do better.
So a couple of quick questions. We were talking about the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Are any of those resources available in languages other than English? I'm thinking about our Spanish-speaking congregations and partners.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the National Suicide Hotline does have a Spanish line, and I'm going to, it looks like that National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, if they go to the website, suicidepreventionlifeline.org.
Suicide prevention.
Lifeline.org. Yeah, so suicidepreventionlifeline.org. They can dial 1-888-628-9454, and that will be a Spanish-speaking line. So once again, that number is 1-888-628-9454. And if they go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org, there is a space there where they can choose Spanish. There's also, which is important, for options for persons who may be deaf or hard of hearing. They can also call 1-800-799-4889. Once again, 1-800-799-4889. There's even a link there where they can chat with a Lifeline person.
Wow. So
we've just talked about persons who may be deaf or hard of hearing. Here's an opportunity for them to seek that same help, as well as I just give the number for those who may speak Spanish. So thanks, Merlin, for asking that, because I think that, we know that mental illness it doesn't discriminate. Anybody can be impacted by mental illness.
You said something earlier. You talked about the importance of making sure we remained physically active, especially during this time when many of us are sheltered in place. Is there any kind of a connection between our physical well-being and our mental well-being?
Absolutely. There's ask anybody who has eaten a meal that was just a really heavy meal. And you hear people say, oh, I just feel so heavy.
Yes.
And it's because that in our gut are these different chemicals that actually regulate mood. So a lot of folks tend to think of just chemicals in the brain that regulate mood, but there's actually chemicals in the gut that regulate mood.
Wow.
So you think about how when you've had a heavy meal and you just feel sluggish, you don't feel like moving around, well, that what you ate influenced how you felt. And so when you think about when you feel that way, what do? You say, let me get up and let me move around and let me walk off this meal. Because we think, well, if I get up and I move around and walk off this meal, then I won't feel sluggish.
Right.
Because this meal has got me feeling sluggish. So I'll get up and I'll walk around. And what happens is when you get up and you start walking around, all of a sudden these endorphins are released and you get a little high and you start feeling better.
Yes.
Because you've gotten up and walked around and those endorphins are now moving and giving you that that sense of adrenaline. That adrenaline is beginning to pump, and then all of a sudden you feel good. And that's why, for instance, like when you go to the gym and you're like, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. I do not want to go to the gym. But then when you get in there, you start doing your walk-in, your treadmill, and you feel better.
You feel great. Yeah.
And you're like,
wow, why did I not want to do this?
I'm so glad I went to the gym.
Yeah.
But it's getting to the gym. And that's the part. But once you get there and you start doing your different cardio, you start doing your different things, your body gets this boost, and that adrenaline right there will be so powerful in helping with depression. It's called basically a self-help approach. So exercise can be a self-help approach. We know that sometimes yoga can be self-help. Meditation can be a self-help approach. All these things can help you. And all these different things are, once again, helping you physically, and in helping yourself physically, you help yourself emotionally.
That's great. That actually leads me to another thing that I was thinking as you were speaking. Sometimes persons are taking medications to help them address their mental health issues and mental health challenges. And those medications can create a sense of lethargy and make it harder. I've heard people say, I feel like I'm moving through a fog. So how do we balance the need for medications and sometimes the negative side effects that they can have?
Yeah, that right there is a very important question. And, people, I don't think people really clearly understand when we say people are practicing medicine. And so a doctor is practicing medicine. And so there is a science behind it. However, it takes multiple tries many times to get it the right dosage. So sometimes you go to a doctor and they'll prescribe multiple approaches, and it takes many times before you get the right regimen that helps you, regulate whatever may be going on with your body. So the same thing is true with medication, is that sometimes the person goes to the doctor and it is too high of a dose. So that causes side effects. The person just says, you know what, if I feel this way, I don't want to have this medication. Right. So we encourage folks to, instead of stop taking the medication, to go back to that doctor and say, these are the side effects. This is how I'm feeling. And have the doctor be the one that says, okay, we need to either take this down, or a person may be saying, I don't feel any change. So it may be, well, we need to take this up a notch so we can see the effects change. But we encourage anybody that if they're taking medication and it doesn't feel right, to get a second opinion, to go to that doctor and say, this isn't working. There has been some medication, which is why there's a black box warning, that have actually increased thoughts of suicide.
Wow.
So when a person feels that way, immediately go to the doctor and say, this is what this is making me feel. Now, of course, we are making an assumption. I'm making an assumption that people have regular access to healthcare. And the truth is, some people don't have regular access to healthcare. And so, it's just one of those things where what you're saying is true for many people. Medications can have those side effects. I would say this much though. What often happens sometimes is that people take their medication and they start feeling really, really good.
Yes.
And they say, I don't need it anymore.
I don't need it.
I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start having a reoccurrence of episodes, and then they realize, I thought I was better, but I'm not. And this is where this is so dangerous sometimes. I grew up in a church where we had what is called testimony service. And people would get up and testify about the goodness of God. And they would say things like, God is so good, I'm healed, and I haven't had my medication in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know no better. We just shout, amen, praise God. We didn't know no better. And then the person was gone for a month after that testimony. And we're like, what happened to sister so-and-so? I thought our brother I thought they was doing so much better.
Right.
And what folks don't realize is that illnesses are episodic.
Mm.
They occur in episodes many times. And so what may happen is that a person may have an episode of depression or anxiety or psychosis, and then they may get on a treatment plan and start doing better and experiencing recovery, and then they have a reoccurrence of that episode, and then they need more treatment and more help. So
right.
mental illness is not always a static, constant state.
Right.
People could have episodes and then feel better over time and then get sick again. So I just think that part is important to note, that sometimes people stop taking medication and then things get worse because they have stopped taking medication.
So that brings me to another question. We've been talking a lot about the individual, her or himself, who is wrestling with these challenges. What can family members or others who are providing support or may live with someone who is moving through issues related to their mental health, what can and should family do?
Well, I'm so glad that you asked that question. And once again, another tool that I've created to help folks is actually the word HELP. It's an acronym. And it's one of the things that helped me and my wife assist our 17-year-old son at the time, who had attempted suicide not only once but on multiple occasions, because he was dealing with severe depression and just did not want to continue to experience the pain that he was experiencing. Thankfully, he is 21 years old, soon to be 22 years old, in recovery. And although he wrestles from time to time, like many do, he has a support system, and he is been able to live with that illness. And so when I desired to help him, I just prayed, and what do I do? And the first thing that came to me was I needed to hear his truth, because I realized that sometimes I needed to hear his truth. I realized that so many people are not telling us the truth because they filter what they say to us. And we do it all the time. We filter stuff through scriptures all the time, and we do not. So we only say what we think people want to hear. So when I heard his truth is when I was able to truly engage him and meet him where he was. And so we have to tell people, I really want to hear what you have to say to me. And then engage them where they are. Don't judge them where they are. Engage them where they are. And that's when you are able to learn how you can help that person. You only learn how you can help a person by asking them, how can I help you? Right. And let them tell us. Don't assume we know how to help them. How can I help you? What can I do to help you? It may be that you can't help them, and they may say, well, you can't help me. Well, who can I find that can help you? Learn from them what they need for help, and then the P stands for plan. And then with them, plan a way to help. And for my son in that instance, we created a system, a check-in system, and it was a text system. And it was, when he was between 1 and 4, we knew that was something that required an immediate response. Anything from between 5 and 7, we knew that he was okay. It was one of those days where he was good, he was coping. And anything 8 to 10 was a great day, Okay. And so we would just check in. What's your number? And what's your number? And just a simple thing. Hey, what's your number? And somebody checks in and say, hey, I'm an 8. You don't have to worry about that. It's right. A good day. Right. But if they check in and say I'm a 4, now you're making a phone call saying, okay, I saw that you said you was a 4. What's going on? So something as simple as texting a number to someone could be a way of helping that person. But that's because you created a plan with them, and together you all know how you can be supportive of that person.
So hear their truth, engage them where they are, learn what they need, and plan.
Yes.
Okay.
That's help. That's help.
This has been incredibly helpful. We're going to create a resource so that we've got all of the acronyms and the numbers, and of course the link to Pathways to Promise included for our listeners so that they have ongoing access to this. I think this has been an incredibly rich conversation. Do you have any parting words that you want to share with us?
Absolutely. I would simply say to persons who are listening to this that if you see something, do something. And what I simply mean by that is that if you see somebody who just doesn't look like they typically look, do something about that. And that could just be saying, hey, how are you doing?
Mm.
If it's a complete stranger and you discern or you sense something and you may just say, hey, how's it going? Just ask that person, how's it going? It's just, if you see something, just do something. And it could just be simply speaking to a person.
Yes.
And so we are even though I know we're practicing social distancing, you can still say hi to somebody.
Take that risk. Take that risk. Yeah.
You can just say hi to a person. So, the scripture says for us to let our light shine before men, that they may see our good works and glorify our Father which art in heaven. So just let your light shine. Let your light shine.
This has been great. Again, this is Reverend Jermaine Alberti. He is the Executive Director for Pathways to Promise, one of the Community Outreach Ministries partners with the American Baptist Home Mission Societies. What a great conversation. God bless you and keep you. Listeners, please look for our links and please reach out to Reverend Jermaine. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thanks.